I have some lilies here that are not doing too well. I keep saying I'm going to be a better plant parent, and I said I'm going to take some lilies this year. They were laying here. I said I'm going to take one home and see what happens, and it's not doing too well. I got some work to do, before I become an actual parent. So I'm going to start praying over this, and maybe it'll come back to life. It'll be resurrected. It's not doing well. It's not doing too well. But I took some lilies this year because I'm always fascinated by the wonderful display that we have here. And it appears that we are all coming down off this high from Easter. I know I am. Easter was exhausting. Okay, Holy Week was a lot of work. Okay, Pastor Bridget, it was... And the exuberance that surrounds celebrating this person in whom we center our faith on, we are all coming down off that high, right? I imagine that your seersucker suits are in the dry cleaners. I'm from the South. That's what we wear on Easter. We wear seersucker, okay? I imagine that you've weaned your children off of Peeps, hopefully, and chocolate bunnies and eggs and jelly beans. And you're praying that they don't have cavities. Which is what I have. But and I assume that some of you who took lilies home, right, that they are thriving, unless you're like me and they are not, and that you got to go home and do a little extra work with your lilies. But I'm wondering something today as we come off from this high of Easter, this moment in our church where we have twice the people here, and it's very crowded and very joyous. I'm wondering, Fort Washington, what do we do when the lilies are gone? What do we do when the lilies are gone? When the drapes that look so nice are taken down and something else is put up there or not? What do we do? When the warmth of spring is upon us, and not today, but it was this weekend, and the warmth of spring is upon us and our worship takes backseat to our other activities, who are we? When the lilies have gone, when our siblings who take shelter in the train station disappear from our frame of sight and thought, what are we? When the lilies have gone, when we realize that aside from the grandeur of this one Sunday out of the year, we are actually in a long stretch of never-ending Saturdays. Saturdays full of gun violence and political abuse. Saturdays full of barely making ends meet. Saturdays full of depression and constant attack on certain bodies by police officers and hunger. And Saturdays full of a lack of affordable housing. And Saturdays full of a fear of deportation. What are we when the lilies have gone? Who are we when the food pantry dries up and the benevolence of Advent season seems so far away? What will our worship look like? What happens when the lilies are gone? Today, Fort Washington, we get reacquainted in this story. We get reacquainted with Peter and John, disciples and friends of Jesus who find themselves wrestling with this very question. Their rabbi, Jesus, their lily of the valley and their bright morning star has gone from them. He has left them with this commission to serve. And I imagine them grappling with the reality of what that meant post-crucifixion and post-resurrection and post-ascension. What did that mean for them? As Mr. Eric told us earlier, Peter and John had just come from healing a man who, before the encounter, could not walk. And the Jewish court system caught wind of this. And so they confronted Peter and John. They were very hypersensitive and hyper-concerned about false prophets and teachers of error, because the people were to look to Rome, were to look to the emperor for healing and deliverance, not to Jesus or his disciples. This is why they assassinated Jesus in the first place. They were threatened by Jesus' ministry. They were threatened by his acts and his teachings that were antithetical to everything they were trying to push forward. And so I imagine that they were feeling pretty good about themselves by this point. They had crucified Jesus, so Jesus was done. And even though, some believed he was resurrected, others, like the Sadducees, didn't. Even though he had resurrected and ascended, they were like shaking they were wiping their hands of Jesus, okay? They were like, okay, we finally got rid of this radical revolutionary. We're done. We can move on with our lives. But here come Peter and John. Peter and John come performing healing acts in Jerusalem, garnering a crowd of thousands and thousands of people, believers and non-believers, and they were proclaiming that deliverance came by way of Jesus and not by way of the empire. And the council didn't like that. The Sadducees did not like that. The priests and the Levites didn't like it. The lawyers and the religious leaders did not like that. They took one look at Peter and John, two regular men, fishermen, who had no political or religious authority according to the laws, and they summed them up. They weren't dressed right. They didn't talk the right way. They weren't qualified to be healing. They didn't have the right degrees to be around here proclaiming and spreading the gospel. They tried so hard to dislike and to discount them. Has that ever happened to you? Somebody tried so hard to dislike you. I mean, people were like digging for dirt on you, right? They couldn't find nothing. They tried so hard to dislike Peter and John. The council tried so hard. But the writer of Acts says they couldn't take their eyes off of them, nor the man that they healed. It was obvious that something spectacular had come of these ordinary men, these fishermen that Jesus had recruited at the beginning of his public ministry. It was obvious that something extraordinary was permeating through Jerusalem, and the religious and the political leaders wanted to silence them, to squash their ministry, because they were threatened by their authority. They couldn't have people running around here thinking that there was no power in the crucifixion. They couldn't have people running around here and believing that the work of Jesus had continued beyond his vicious murder. They tried to discount Peter and John. But isn't it funny that when our enemies try to count us out, their malintent is blinded by our boldness, by our courageousness, that even when we are perceived to be unqualified to do the work of justice and of loving mercy and of walking humbly with God, that the fact that we are companions with Jesus knocks all of that out. The author of Acts says that Peter and John were immediately recognized as companions of Jesus. Unlearned and ignorant, but companions of Jesus. Disheveled, I imagine, and unqualified, but companions of Jesus. Uneducated and poor, but companions of Jesus, that nothing or no one could disqualify them because they were companions of Jesus. But despite all that, the council decided to threaten them if they continued to perform and proclaim the works of Christ. I wonder how many of us would have walked away in that moment. How many of us would have walked away from the revolution after seeing our good friend Jesus on the cross, bleeding, lungs collapsed, after witnessing the assassination of Malcolm or Martin, after being bullied and hosed down by violent police state? How many of us would have walked away at that threat? That threat had weight. They saw it with their own eyes. I wonder how many of us would have gone into hiding, would have thrown in the towel, would have abandoned the work of justice after seeing our good friend murdered, because resurrection wasn't a possibility for everyone. The other two men on the cross didn't get to be resurrected. I wonder if their families waited at the tomb after they had heard about Jesus' resurrection, hoping that they would rise too. The majority of the people do not get resurrected. So this This threat had weight to it. This threat held weight. And they tell Peter and John, look, we'll release you. We'll let you go, but you have to shut up about it. We'll let you go, but you got to shut up about this Jesus stuff. We'll let you go, but you got to shut up about this justice stuff. We'll let you go, but you got to stop preaching politics in your pulpit. We'll let you go, but you got to shut up about it. They tell Peter and John to shut up. And my favorite moment is when Peter and John say, no. No, I will not shut up. No, I will not go quietly into the night. No, I will not be silent. No. The council seemed confused and shook. And Peter were like, listen, y'all can decide what y'all gonna do about, us listening to God over you. That's between you and your God. But the Message Bible says it like this: as for us, we cannot be quiet about the things we have seen and we have heard. We cannot keep quiet about the power that works within our hands. Peter and John, who had been commissioned by Jesus himself to do the work of justice, said, we cannot be silent. We will not disappear because you are threatened by our ministry. No, we will not be intimidated by the remnants of the empire. No, we will not take down our rainbow flag. No, we will not stop fighting for tighter gun control laws. No, we will not settle for the status quo from our political leaders. Majority rules is not enough. No, I will not be silent. I will not be silent. We will continue to do the work of justice, even amidst the threats. Fort Washington, when the Lilies are gone, what will we do? Who will we be? When the dried blood of Shahid Bassel has been washed from the pavement in Crown Heights, what will we be when the Lilies are gone? Who will we be after the beauty of March for Our Lives has faded into our distant memories? When the NRA continues to undermine everything that those kids are fighting for, will we be silent? Will we be complacent? Will we be content, satisfied with political mediocrity, afraid of retribution and faking blindness to the injustices of this world? Who will we be when the Lilies have gone? Will we be like Peter and John, bold, courageous, confident, vocal? Will we stand before the empire and proclaim that no matter how much you threaten us, no matter how many times I have to appear before a judge, before a council member, before an assembly member, I will continue to speak truth to power? Who will we be when the Lilies are gone? Will we take for granted basic necessities like clean water and stable shelter? Or will we have the courage and the boldness and the audacity to say, I will not be silent about the water crisis in Flint, Michigan. I will not be silent about what's happening in Syria. I will not be silent about the way the government has disregarded our siblings in Puerto Rico and the U.S. Virgin Islands. I will not be silent about the religious and the political institutions that try to silence me. I will not be silent about the way the empire is persecuting my Muslim siblings. I will not be silent. That when the Lilies are gone, I pray that you will not be silent. I pray that your worship won't take a back seat to the warmth of summer. I pray that in this season between Easter and Advent, your service towards others and care for each other don't go on vacation. I pray that you will not be silent, that we will not be silent, that I will not be silent. Ashe and amen.